the Library of Alexandria burned. With it went knowledge that might have changed human history, medical texts that could cure diseases, mathematical theories that could have advanced science by centuries, engineering plans for machines we had to reinvent thousands of years later. All gone, turned to ash. Today we're going to explore what was actually in that library, what we know was lost, and how its destruction set humanity back. This is not speculation. Ancient writers left records of what the library contained, and what they describe is staggering. Let me start with what the Library of Alexandria actually was. Built in the 3rd century BC in Egypt, it was the largest collection of knowledge in the ancient world. The goal was simple but ambitious: collect every book ever written. Scholars estimate it held between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls at its peak. To put that in perspective, that's more books than any other library would have for the next 1,000 years. The library employed hundreds of scholars who did nothing but copy, translate, and study texts. Every ship that docked in Alexandria had its books confiscated, copied, and returned. The library got the originals. The owners got the copies. The library was not just storage. It was an active research institution. The greatest minds of the ancient world worked there. Euclid wrote his Elements of Geometry there. Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference there with remarkable accuracy. Aristarchus proposed that Earth orbits the Sun 1,800 years before Copernicus, all at the Library of Alexandria. Now let's talk about what was lost. We know this from references in surviving texts written by people who studied at the library before it was destroyed. The library had the complete works of ancient Greek playwrights. We have 7 plays by Sophocles. The library had over 120. We have 7 plays by Aeschylus. The library had 90. These were not just entertainment. Greek plays explored philosophy, ethics, politics, and human nature in ways we can only glimpse from the fragments that survived. The library contained detailed medical texts by physicians we barely know today. One was Herophilus, who performed human dissections and mapped the nervous system. He understood the brain was the center of intelligence, not the heart. He described the optic nerve and distinguished between sensory and motor nerves. His books are gone. We only know about his work from brief mentions in other texts. Another physician, Aristratos, figured out that blood flows through arteries and veins in a circuit. He was close to understanding circulation 1,800 years before William Harvey. His complete works were in the library. We lost them all. A library had engineering texts that described machines and techniques we had to rediscover much later. Hero of Alexandria wrote about steam engines, wind wheels, and automated machines. Some of his work survived, but many didn't. We know he built a working steam engine in the 1st century AD. It was a toy, not used for practical work, but the principle was there. If that technology had been preserved and developed, the Industrial Revolution could have started 1,700 years earlier. The library contained the complete history of ancient Egypt written by an Egyptian priest named Manetho. He had access to temple records going back thousands of years. His work is lost. We only have small fragments quoted by later writers. We lost the most complete history of one of humanity's greatest civilizations, written by someone who could read the original sources. There were detailed star charts and astronomical observations collected over centuries. Ancient astronomers tracked planetary movements with precision. They predicted eclipses. They understood Earth was round and calculated its size. The library had centuries of astronomical data that could have accelerated our understanding of the cosmos. That data is gone. A library held mathematical texts that might have been more advanced than anything we had until the Renaissance. We know Archimedes wrote treatises on calculus-like concepts. Some survived, but many were lost. Ancient Greek mathematicians were working on problems that we thought were only solved in the 17th century. We lost that thread of knowledge and had to start over. Books on agriculture, architecture, and engineering are gone. The Romans built aqueducts, roads, and buildings that still stand. Much of their engineering knowledge came from Greek sources that were housed in Alexandria. When the library burned, we lost the foundational texts. The Romans preserved some engineering knowledge, but when the Roman Empire fell, much of that was lost too. Europe had to relearn basic engineering from scratch. The library contained religious and philosophical texts from around the known world, books from Persia, India, and Africa, multiple translations of the Hebrew Bible, Zoroastrian texts, Buddhist writings. We lost a window into how ancient cultures thought about the universe, ethics, and human purpose. These texts might have shown connections between cultures we never knew existed. There were books on extinct languages. The library had dictionaries and grammars for languages that no longer exist. If we had those, we could decode ancient inscriptions we can't read today. We could understand cultures we can only guess about from archaeological evidence. Now let me tell you what's even more frustrating. The library did not burn all at once in one catastrophic event. It died slowly over centuries through neglect, conflict, and deliberate destruction. The first major damage came in 48 BC when Julius Caesar set fire to ships in Alexandria's harbor during a war. The fire spread to parts of the library. Ancient sources disagree on how much was destroyed. Some say a warehouse of books burned. Others say the main library survived, but a smaller branch was damaged. More damage came in 272 AD when the Roman Emperor Aurelian attacked Alexandria. Parts of the city burned, including areas near the library. Again, we don't know exactly how much was lost. The final destruction probably came in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. As Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire, pagan temples and institutions were shut down. The library was associated with pagan learning. In 391 AD, the Christian emperor Theodosius ordered pagan temples destroyed. The Serapeum, which held part of the library's collection, was destroyed by a Christian mob. By the time Arab forces conquered Alexandria in 641 AD, there was probably little left. The story that Arabs burned the library is likely false. Most scholars think the library was already gone by then. But here's the most painful part. It was not just fire that destroyed knowledge. It was neglect and deliberate suppression. Many texts were lost because nobody copied them. Scrolls decay, papyrus rots. Books have to be copied to survive. During late antiquity and the early Middle Ages, only certain books were deemed worth copying. Religious texts were copied. Pagan philosophy and science were often ignored. Some books survived in other libraries or in translations, but many existed only in Alexandria. When those single copies were destroyed or allowed to decay, the knowledge was gone forever. Let me give you specific examples of what this loss meant for human progress. Aristarchus proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system around 270 BC. He said Earth and other planets orbit the Sun. His book is lost. We only know about it from a reference by Archimedes. Copernicus didn't propose heliocentrism until 1543 AD. That's 1800 years later. If Aristarchus's work had survived and been taken seriously, we might have understood the solar system 1800 years earlier. Eratosthenes calculated Earth's circumference around 240 BC with remarkable accuracy. He was off by less than 2%. His method was brilliant, and his books explained it in detail. Those books are lost. We know his result, but not his full methodology. If his work had been preserved, later scholars would not have doubted Earth's size and shape. The loss of medical knowledge is harder to quantify but possibly more tragic. Ancient physicians knew things that medieval doctors did not. They understood infection, surgical techniques, and anatomical structures that were forgotten. Medieval medicine was often worse than ancient medicine because the books were gone. How many people died from diseases that ancient doctors could have treated? We'll never know. Here's what makes this all more painful. Some of this knowledge was preserved in the Islamic world. Arab scholars translated Greek texts and preserved them. During Europe's Dark Ages, Centers of learning in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba kept ancient knowledge alive. When these texts made their way back to Europe during the Renaissance, they sparked a revolution in learning. But many texts never made it to the Islamic world. They were lost before they could be translated. And even the Islamic libraries suffered destruction. The Mongols destroyed the House of Wisdom in Baghdad in 1258 AD. They threw so many books into the Tigris River that the water ran black with ink. More knowledge gone. We can see hints of what we lost in the texts that did survive. Archimedes wrote a method for calculating areas and volumes that was basically integral calculus. His method was lost for centuries until a copy was found in 1906. It had been erased and written over in the Middle Ages because someone needed the parchment. That's how close we came to losing even the fragments that survived. The Antikythera mechanism, that ancient Greek computer we discussed before, shows that ancient engineers could build complex devices we never imagined they had. The device itself survived by accident in a shipwreck. The instruction manual did not. How many other devices could they build? We don't know because the books are gone. What could our world look like if the Library of Alexandria had survived? This is speculation, but informed speculation. If the scientific method had been preserved and built upon, the scientific revolution might have happened 1,000 years earlier. Industrialization might have come sooner. Modern medicine might have developed faster. Or maybe not. Maybe the society was not ready for that knowledge. Maybe economic and social conditions needed to be right for science to flourish. But we'll never know because we don't have the chance to find out. The knowledge is gone. Some people argue that the important knowledge would have been preserved. If it was truly valuable, copies would have survived somewhere. But this ignores how knowledge transmission actually works. Books survive through deliberate effort and luck. Many important works survived in single copies. If that one copy is destroyed or lost, the knowledge is gone no matter how valuable it was. We're experiencing something similar today with digital preservation. Websites disappear, digital files become unreadable, storage media degrades. Future generations might look back at the early internet the way we look at Alexandria. So much information existed, but we didn't preserve it properly, so it vanished. The difference is we have redundancy now, multiple copies in multiple locations, cloud storage, internet archive, but even with modern technology, we lose information. Digital decay is real. If our civilization collapsed tomorrow, future archaeologists would struggle to read our hard drives and USB sticks, the way we struggle to read ancient languages. The lesson of Alexandria is that knowledge is fragile. It survives through conscious effort. Every text that exists today exists because someone cared enough to copy it, preserve it, and pass it on. The texts that died in Alexandria died because that chain broke. Nobody copied them. Nobody valued them enough to save them. Here's what we can do about it. Support libraries and archives. They're not just buildings with books. They're the institutions that preserve knowledge across generations. When governments cut funding for libraries, they're making the same mistake ancient civilizations made. They're deciding that preservation is not worth the cost. Support digital preservation efforts. The Internet Archive and other organizations are working to save websites, books, and media before they disappear. This is important work. And think about what knowledge you have that's not written down. Family histories, traditional techniques, local knowledge. If you don't record it, it dies with you. The Library of Alexandria was not just famous books by famous people. It was the accumulated knowledge of an entire civilization. When it burned, ordinary knowledge burned too. Recipes, songs, stories, all gone. We can't rebuild the Library of Alexandria. The scrolls are ash. The knowledge is lost. But we can learn from its destruction. We can be more careful with the knowledge we have. We can preserve it better. We can make sure future generations have access to what we've learned. The loss of Alexandria is a wound in human history that never healed. We'll never know what we lost. We can only see the shadows of it in the references that survived. Ancient writers mention books we'll never read. They described discoveries we had to rediscover. They hinted at knowledge we can only imagine. Somewhere in the ashes of Alexandria is the cure for a disease, the solution to a problem, the answer to a question we're still asking. We lost it before we knew we needed it. And that's the real tragedy. Not just what we lost, but what we never got the chance to learn. If this exploration of lost knowledge made you think about how fragile human progress is, hit that like button and subscribe. We're examining the moments in history where humanity lost ground and what we can learn from them. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation into the knowledge we've lost and the knowledge we're still trying to recover. Drop a comment with what ancient text you wish had survived. Maybe somewhere a copy still exists, waiting to be found.